For my final project, I'm going to be showing you how we made the pinwheel pillow, but instead of just describing the instructions to you, I'm going to be showing you the techniques and all the stuff that we learned. So for the pinwheel pillow, you obviously need fabric, and you'll need dressmaker shears and regular scissors, and the difference is the curve in dressmaker shears, and there's no curve in scissors. You'll need thread that matches the fabric, so purple for me at least, and then an empty bobbin. You'll need pins and a pin cushion, and then threading needles, or you can use chalk, marking pencils, tracing wheel, and tracing paper, whatever you can, so that way you know where and what you need to cut. You'll need a tape measure or a ruler, and then depending if you'll need it or not, but I will need a seam ripper in case I mess up. And then you have an iron to iron your fabric, and then you'll obviously need a sewing machine. Okay, so when making a project, you need to follow the instructions. So the first instruction is to get all your pieces and measure and pin them and then cut them. So, since I'm not actually making the pinwheel pillow but a smaller version, I'm just going to be measuring my fabric, and I'm going to be doing 6 inches by 6 inches. So once that's all measured out and pinned, we'll get back. So now that I've measured and pinned it all, I will be using my dressmaker shears to cut the square out, and then obviously another square to make a little pillow. And I'm going to be using dressmaker shears because these have a more precise cut for fabric and will make just the cut better compared to scissors that won't cut it as well and will make it scraggly and bad. So before I cut everything out, I plugged in my iron. That way it would be all heated up and ready once everything was cut out. So now I'm going to iron, and the reason you iron is that way before you sew, everything is uniform and you have a more precise pillow instead of it all being wrinkly. So we're just going to iron it out. Now that I'm done ironing, I made sure to unplug it and wrap up the cord. That way there's no safety hazards. Also, you should be doing this on an ironing board or take the proper precautions. That way you don't burn any of your furniture or anything. So, yeah. So now I'm going to be pinning the 2 pieces of fabric together, like so. And you're going to do it like this. That way you can still sew over the needles. They're perfectly perpendicular. That way you can sew over the needles, and you won't have to worry about taking it out and sewing, taking it out and sewing. Okay. So I've pinned the 2 pieces together. That way I'll be able to sew them. And I've left a little, about 2 inches of nothing pinned here. That way I'll be able to reverse it, stuff it, and then I'll have to hand sew that. That way you won't see a lot of thread. But before you can do that, you have to get the machine set up. So I'm going to be plugging in my presser foot and then setting it down on the ground. And then I'm going to be turning on the on switch / light switch. And I like to just step on the presser foot for a couple seconds, not even, just to make sure that everything's working, which it is. And then we will start by winding our bobbin. Okay, so you're ready to thread your machine. So you have to make sure that your thread is from the back, not like this. So you just slip it onto the little rod and put the cap on top. And then you're going to start threading your bobbin. So you hook it around, make sure you have enough, and then you will place the thread through one of the holes in the bobbin. Make sure you're going from the inside though. Grab it, place it on the bobbin, and switch it. And then you're ready to thread it. So I like to just hold the thread and press on my presser foot until I have enough thread on the bobbin to help sew. Now that you've winded your bobbin for as much thread as you need, you're just going to cut off that little bit with your scissors. And now you're going to take the bobbin off. So switch it over, undo it, and then just unthread everything. And your bobbin is ready. So now you're ready to thread with your actual thread, not the bobbin. So you're just going to start by placing it on the rod, putting the cap over it, and just start threading. So you're going to go through this little metal piece, around this piece, down, which it has it numbered to help you. Make sure your the take-up lever is up, around, round. Now I'm going to be putting the thread through it, and sometimes you have to twist it, you have to lick it, whatever makes it easiest to get through. And I like to drop this piece, I find it easier. And it's through. And then you just place that back on and around, and now you're going to be putting your bobbin in. So for my sewing machine, I have to pull this part out, which holds all of the other sewing machine materials, and I open this part, and there is where you put the bobbin. So again, you make sure, just like the sewing machines at school, you make sure your bobbin is in a P shape, put it in, and for me, I have to go around and around. That way it kind of holds it. And then you grab this piece back and just slip it in. So I hold the thread coming in from the needle while I grab the hand wheel and turn it towards me until I see that it's hooked, knotted, whatever. And it is knotted. So now I'm just going to close this up, flip that back on, and we are ready to sew. Now that you're all pinned and your sewing machine is threaded, you are ready to start sewing. But before you can get right into the sewing, you have to make sure that all of the settings are correct, so that your stitch pattern is on straight stitch, because that's what we're going to be starting with, and that your length and width are whatever the instructions say. So for me, it's like in between 3 and 4 for the length, and then the width is 3. So you're ready to start your sewing. So you are going to place your presser foot lifter down before you start sewing, because if you don't, you will knot it. And you're ready to start sewing. So we're just going to do that, and we're going to sew up until here, and then I'm going to reverse it, that way I know the knot is precise. And I'm going to just sew the rest of this, and then we'll come back. So now that I've sewed and removed all the pins, I am ready to do the zigzag stitch. So I'm going to change my stitch setting to the zigzag, and I'm just going to re-sew it again. That way it is 100% secure and it won't unthread, or if it does, there's another stitch to help it stay secure for a little bit longer. So now that I've done both of the stitches, we're just going to turn the pillow inside out. That way we can stuff and hand sew it. I also forgot to mention that when I was doing the corners, I would have to lift my presser foot from being down to up, and I would have to turn my fabric to a 90-degree pivot, just so it was all precise. So now that we're done with the sewing machine, and the only sewing we have left will be hand sewing, I'm going to turn my machine off, unplug it, wind it up, and put it away. So now that we have it all sewed, I just like to take a stick that you get with the stuffing, and I like to just make sure that all of the corners are out as far as possible, making the pillow as big as you intended. And then you're just going to grab your fluff and start putting it into the pillow. Now that you have stuffed the pillow to your liking, you're going to need to hand sew the little opening. So instead of sewing the pillow like that, you're going to put the pieces, the little parts, inside, folded, so it looks like the rest. And then you're going to take a hand sewing needle and the same thread that you used for everything else, and you're just going to place the thread inside the needle, and just like the machine, you might have to cut it at an angle, lick it. So now you're just going to start doing an overcast stitch as closely and as cleanly as possible, that way it's not extremely visible on the pillow. So I'm just going to start doing that. So now that I have stitched it, you will need to knot the stitch to make sure that it obviously doesn't come undone. So I will do that now. So now that I've overcast stitched it and knotted it, doing it as precisely and cleanly as I can so you don't see it, we are completely done with the pillow. So another way to mark your patterns or fabric is a tracing paper and a tracing wheel. So you just take the piece of paper, color side down onto the fabric, and you just grab your tracing wheel and you mark wherever you need to cut, well, where you would need to cut for the fabric. So another alternative way of marking your fabric is with tailor's chalk. So you would simply just draw on the fabric wherever you need to cut, and then it washes off when you are done. So the last way to mark your fabric is a tracing pencil / marker, whatever you have, and you'd simply just, again, draw on the fabric just like the chalk, and again, it can wash out. So the last thing that I want to show you is the stitch ripper. I didn't have to use this for this project, but usually the first time you do a project, you will need to use this. So you use the stitch ripper to either take apart a project or take apart just a certain part of a project, and when you need to redo it. So I'll show you guys on a scrunchie how to use it. So I'm just going to get it under and start ripping it. And it's pretty easy and kind of like a really relaxing part of sewing. So that, in a smaller version, is how I made my pinwheel pillow and other materials that you can use or will use for other projects. So yeah, that's it.